All right. Hey, Bean.
Hey.
All right, so the girls are at a women's church thing. So Jude and I are going to try to service this John Deere 650. My grandfather bought this in October of 1984. And we're going to have to change the alternator. Got to change the oil filter. We're going to change the air filter. And the fuel filter should be right down there. We'll change that too. So we'll get started on that. What we did, we found a service pack on Amazon, and we found an aftermarket alternator. We'll see how that works, and we'll give it a go, see how it runs. So you ready, Bean?
Uh-huh.
All right, well, let's put this right over here. Let's get the oil drain here. Okay, let me mute that, see if that does a little bit better for us. All right, so speed it up just so you can follow along there. We've got the oil filter. It's right above where we're working. The drain plug's actually on the other side. So we'll go over and get the oil drained out of it, and then I'll come back over to this side and take the filter off. One of the things in that Amazon service pack that I got, and I'll have the link in the video, pulled that filter out and compared them, and the new filter is smaller canister size. But later on, when I started measuring and put them against each other, they did actually fit together really well. So anyway, we'll spin that filter off in a few minutes. But there's the drain plug right there, and correct remember, I think it took about around the 2.5 quarts of oil altogether. So I was going to use a standard kind of oil filter wrench to pull that thing off. You've got the wires coming back off the battery lead and down around the alternator. It makes that area kind of tight to work in. So after fooling with it for a minute, I just realized, you know what, this filter is going in the trash anyway, so I got my big pair of channel locks, and that's how I ended up getting it off. Just line them up, get a good grip on that filter, and give it a nice little twist, and then it would come off real easy for us. So taking the old oil filter off, since I won't need it anymore, and throw it down on the drain pan, let it drain its way on out of there. Back on the other side where we were draining stuff, I wanted to go ahead and take the fuel filter off. So it's got that metal ring. This one had been on there for a little while, so it was pretty tight. Once I got it kind of loose there, I was able to spin the rest of it off. Yep, that is the correct. You see there, one was metal. That's a plastic on that aftermarket, but it looks like it'll work. So we'll look at her. Did you get me another blue towel, Jude?
Okay.
It's on the other side, if you can. Well, no, just bring me a blue towel, okay?
Okay.
Thanks. Snapped on pretty nicely. I'm just going to clean all the gunk out of here as best I can. Alright, so what I ended up doing is, after I made sure that the filter fit and everything was going to seat nicely, I wanted to get that old diesel fuel out of there. So I just took all the filter out, put me a nice bucket underneath it, and opened the fuel cutoff up, and just slowly let the diesel fuel drain out of the system. And it took a little while because it was pretty full, but I didn't want to take a chance on any of that old fuel But let's get it all out. Figure we'll start back with fresh diesel. So, while we're letting that fuel drain, let's change our air filter. So you get the air filter that we bought. We're right now we're what, 1 for 2 on good filters. Let's see if the air filter works out for us. Try to get it where y'all can follow us there. Okay, so the air filter canister on the front there, the head comes off. There's a threaded bolt on one side with a strap around it, so kind of loosen that threaded bolt, takes the cover off, and then just a standard wing nut on top of that air filter. And it was stuck down in there pretty good. Of course, it's got a rubber gasket seat kind of on the bottom, so once I just got a little bit of hold of it, I was able to pull it out. The air filter that came in the Amazon kit, the plastic portion was actually on the wrong end. We'll fix that in a minute. But took the original air filter canister lid, blew it all out, kind of wiped it all down, and then brought it back out here. You can see showing Jude which end the plastic would go on to the new air filter when we put it in there. And there's a rubber seat on the end that I'm putting that on. And I'll let Jude stick it in there for me and kind of get it lined up and seat it down and put the wing nut to it, tighten her all up. That will allow us to get the air filter back in, again clean that whole cap off, put the cap back on, use the bolt to tighten the band back up, and that one worked pretty good out of that kit. Alright, so we flip back over to the other side here, and we're going to change the alternator out. The original one wasn't working anymore, and you're looking at a 17 and 19 millimeter socket. Works pretty good. The 17, I believe, was what was up on the actual adjustment arm, where you can increase the tension on the belt by pulling that alternator out. So that one was obviously easy to pull out and get loose. Then getting in on the back side to where that 19 millimeter bolt was at was a little bit more difficult to get that out, just working in that tight space, and of course with that belt all right in through there. And about the time you could get slack on the belt, you were at a point where the alternator couldn't rotate anymore. So just slowly had to kind of work it through, prise a little bit this way and that way, used a pair of channel locks, kind of get a little bit of a grip and be able to pull that thing on and off. So a little bit of difficulty in there. You'll see it when I go to install the new one, but with the aftermarket one we bought, and I'll put the link in the bottom of the video, they're probably the fact we didn't change the belt, so it's the original belt. I think there's just no slack in it, and the new one maybe just cast a little bit different. I couldn't get enough tension running it through the actual adjustment arm, so what I did is I actually drilled the hole out so I could get a little bit bigger bolt in there and pulled it out beyond the adjustment arm, and used another bolt that was a little bit larger that would lock in against the adjustment arm to give me enough tension on the actual alternator to hold it into position there. So kind of had to do a little bit of engineering to make it work the way we needed it to, but we were able to get it off, get the new one on, and get enough tension to kind of hold it out so that we had proper tensioning on the belt, and that would allow us to be able to get the alternator to spin, to hold tension on everything. You can see here we're still trying to get the original one off. Jude's kind enough to get me one of my prize bars, because it was a real pain to kind of work that thing off that internal stud far enough to be able to get the belt loose and get it to turn loose and pull everything out. So a little bit of a struggle, but we were able to make it happen and then get our way to putting the new one on. I'll do it random, easy.
Oh, I don't need it.
No, so that looks about the same. Everything looks good. All
Push
the
it
same.
open, Daddy.
What? What's up? Look at the trash. So as I mentioned, the new one, I guess the combination of a new alternator and the older belt, maybe there's just some stretch in it, although it looked in pretty good condition. It wasn't dry rotted or having many cracks in it. It just wasn't getting the tension by running the bolt through the regular bracket up there, so I ended up bringing it out beyond the bracket, drilling the actual bolt hole out a little bit so I could get a bigger nut through it, bolt nut, and just kind of hold it a little bit further out, using that bracket in the position it's still in as my brace, and that was able to give us enough tension to be able to have the belt turn and keep tension on everything else and produce the proper readings coming out of the alternator. So a little bit of work, a little bit of finagling again, kind of a little bit of a tight spot, especially dealing with that larger stud on the inside as you're trying to install. Just tough to reach in there and to get that belt back on, but we made it happen. I didn't really want to take the radiator and all that stuff off just to get back in there, so we just took a little bit longer and took our time, made it happen, and we were able to get the alternator in place. And of course, here in a little bit you'll see me checking the electrical readings off of it to ensure that we're putting out the proper current.
Small.
It's smaller, but where's that jug of oil at?
I was like to feel these handles. Oh.
Let me see that there. You can put that back for me. Okay, so we're gonna give it a go here. Different capacity size, but it looks like that ceiling ring is the same size. So that may actually work out there. So you can see, although the canister size is a little bit smaller, the ceiling ring and the threading was actually the same, so it did match up. So that made it for a real easy spin on. Let me see that. Give me a Phillips head screwdriver. There might be one out here, but if you see one there, that's fine too.
Here we go.
I'll leave it just a minute. Hang on, bud. Let me see what you want. Just put some diesel fuel in it, and then we'll bleed it. Just like that. You see that? So these are bleed screws. So I need to open up the fuel. There we go. See the fuel filling up until fuel comes out of these bleed screws. I'll get all the air out of this. See the fuel coming out there? That's good. That's what we want. See if we're getting it. And there it is. It's coming out there too. Alright, that takes the air out of the system. If it gets air in the system, it won't run. Alright. Okay, so we got the fuel filter on, system bled out, so now we want to put a new battery into it, because again the battery was probably over a decade old in there. Nearest side is the actual ground side of it. That ground cable is super short. It did fit, just kind of had to twist the battery initially to get it where it was easy to tighten on. I looked at maybe flipping the battery around and pushing the post a little bit closer to the radiator, but I didn't like how close the post would have been underneath that air filter, so I decided just to put it back in the way it had come out originally. That allowed us to be able to stick everything back in like it was. So put the ground on and got that all tightened up, and then flipped over to the other side, and we're able to get our positive on the other side. So of course the ground negative side just goes right underneath has a little bolt right in the frame right there where it grounds to, and there on the positive side the wire, plenty of length, so it was easy to get on, wasn't corroded or messed up in any way, so that made it nice and easy. And the lead from that goes down, passes underneath the bottom corner of the radiator, and makes its way back to the module on the back side of the dash up there.
Oh, I guess it'd help if I gave it gas.
So after we got it going, I noticed on the dash I was still getting the electrical indicator light that something wasn't working right. So I got out the multimeter and was testing the alternator, and I was doing fine. Everything's coming well off the alternator, so either I've got a bad reading on the dash, or maybe in that relay module we're not carrying charge up to the battery, but we know we got the alternator working right.
Gas, gas, gas. Push forward, forward. That's good.